Steve Wilson with Nefesh. How and why did we start Nefesh? Well, the industry is filled with nutritional things that talk about stimulants, they talk about vitamins and minerals, and I was really bothered by the fact that no one ever talked about ATP, the way the energy of the body is made, and how the body cleans itself. So we developed a product that's designed specifically to build ATP, to clean the system, to generate life, create oxygen, and then clean the system as it is. And we named it Nefesh because it means the passion of the body is in the blood. So dealing with that, we wanted to know, as the questions that I asked myself, is there stress? Is there fatigue? Is there anxiety? All of these had to be answered. And I did it through a metaphorical approach of concepts versus structure. And the concept that I worked with was simply, are we designed to be sick? And if we're not designed to be sick, how is it that we are so incredibly sick as a culture? So the idea here is, if we're not, then we keep the body clean, meaning tissue, meaning the brain, meaning the emotional side, all of these things, including the spiritual and the financial. And most of this is derived from the attitudes that you have about yourself as to how you take care of yourself. Most of us just do not understand that we are made in a very special way. So there was a young Japanese doctor that discovered this thing in 2016, won a Nobel Prize, and they called it autophagy, meaning that from here down there's a lymph system that's designed to clean all the dead cells, all of the toxins out of the body, but it's premised on the fact that you eat correctly. And we were designed to eat a fat-based diet, which we haven't done. We've converted to carbohydrates and proteins because we were told that those were the best sources of energy, and in fact, they are not. But the ability to cleanse itself means that at night, if you are on a fat-based diet, then there's a medium-chain triglyceride that goes back through the system from the neck down and cleans the debris out. But that depends on if you're sleeping correctly. Now we know that at least 50% of all Americans do not sleep well. Too much anxiety, too much of a stimulant that we need to address. So this REM sleep comes into play. How do we arrive at a deep sleep to where this brain can do what it does? In fact, in a REM or a deep sleep, the brain literally shrinks. The cellular makeup of the brain shrinks by upwards to 60%, allowing a fluid, a cerebral fluid, to pass through and clean out the amyloid beta plaque that's built up from a poor diet. Isn't that amazing? So that was the concept of cleaning first. The structure I chose, another metaphor, is if from a creationist viewpoint, I'm supposed to be a light into the world. Well, you can't be a light into the world if you're overweight, if you're filled with diseases and you can't remember who you are, and the aging process has entered to where no one likes to look old. So this menorah is very interesting because the center column is called a yark, and that's the measuring, that's the sun, that's the fuel source, and it's a plumb line. The rest of those arms are there the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of understanding, control, power. All of these things are based on that menorah. So if I were to take that into play and understand that every morning the priests went in to the tabernacle and they cleaned the wick from the burnt, meaning it was not burning correctly, it was old, it was passé, it was the wrongdoings that we had before the day. Then they took it outside and they buried it, giving you a brand new day. And we're going to call that day a Mitzrayim. It means a new beginning. So the fuel source that we have now is the most wonderful olive oil. And if I simply lived by those instructions, the mitzvah or the instructions from Scripture tell me that if I'll live and abide by those guidelines, that he will bless me with good health and he will bless my barns. And that's an interesting concept because, if you're healthy, it costs a whole lot less to live and you're more energized and you think better. On the other side, he gave me that choice of free will, saying that if I chose not to, then I would be living in a world of inflammation. And that inflammation means disease and fatigue. It's all a choice, and it's all about understanding. So the first thing that we're looking at is the source of food that we were designed to live by. And it says in Genesis 1:29 that the plants, the seed-bearing plants, were the most important thing that we were to work with. So as this plant grows, there's a number of things depending on the quality of the soil, the quality of the seed. All at once, this seed gave us some very interesting elements. One's called vitamins, minerals, fats, the fuel for the body. And then the cleaning ability of that were phenols, which is kind of an alcohol-like thing that cleans the receptor sites off of the body. And then, of course, there's the monoterpenes and the sesquiterpenes that are designed to rebuild damaged DNA. What an incredible story. This thing is really an unusual story because in the botanical world, it's called a process that allows the plant that if it's not healthy to literally kill itself. And yet these oils, these essential oils that flow through the plant to protect it, will turn on the plant if it's not healthy and kill it, or they will protect it to give you and I a healthy food source. So it's within that kind of world that we begin to look at the plant world for antibacterial, antiviral, antiparasitical stuff. And we know from science now that things have frequencies. Everything has a frequency. The human brain has a frequency that measures somewhere between 70 and 90 megahertz. A healthy body is somewhere in the 62 to 70 megahertz range. And you go down through and you find that these things are measured and cancer shows up at around 40. And you think about these frequencies, could that be true? Well, the unusual thing about what we're talking about is simply radio stations. We all know that to pick up a given radio station, we have to fall on that frequency. So it's an easy measurement that we have. And then in these essential oils that are produced in the plant world, trees, plants, things of that nature, we know that some of the megahertz speed in these plants are upwards to 300. So if we're lowering our frequency in our body to a frequency where disease lives in it, it would make sense to take out the foods that are dead, highly processed foods, and fill them with foods that are alive. In other words, to eat from performance rather than to eat from comfort. If we do that, we'll find a base of seeds and nuts at the core, and then the essential oils to protect, and we'll get into that at a later date. So here we sit with a little thing called quantum physics. It first introduced itself under that name, quantum physics. It's graduated to quantum mechanics, and now I want to introduce you to a thing called quantum biology. Keeping in mind that the atom is only made up of 1% mass. That means 99% of the atom is nothing. So that means if we're made up of atoms, then only 1% of our body is mass. The other 99% is nothing. Well, that's not quite true, because here we have the Cambridge people that have built simulators that talk about what's in that nothingness, and you're seeing it in the background. It is an incredible arrangement of frequencies and wavelengths, really, really oscillating back and forth, in front and in the middle of your body. And we live, candidly, in an environment that we never see. It's made up of these frequencies, and it's made up of all of the wavelengths that you can imagine. In fact, just thinking about the number of cells that receive sense, that I am told, and I have read, that your ability to recognize 1 trillion different scents. You might want to know how those things are stored so that you can recognize them. And here we have an indicator over here where most people have been inundated with so many possibilities, the unknown, the finances, the issues with cancer. And now we have depicted in a cartoon form this young gentleman in the 12th century when the wars were starting, and he comes up to the king and he says, hey, we've got a tool here that will give you the ability to fight these wars. And the king says, no, I can't be bothered with some silly salesman at the moment. Can you see that I've got wars to fight? And that seems to be the way Americans function. So to blend all of this together, the toxins depolarize the cell. There are allergens, there are viruses, there are bacteria, fungi. Every one of these things have a frequency. So from a logical position, rather than waiting for someone to build you an antioxidant, maybe if you understood that your immune system is created principally in the gut. And if your gut is not healthy, then all at once your immune system, the killer cells that you produce, the neurotransmitters that allow you to build this thing called GABA, which allows you to sleep at night and get that cleaning procedure done in the system. All tissues, all organs, all emotional thoughts, everything has frequency. We just need to understand that if we increase the frequency, we will in fact live a healthier life. And in that searing moment of truth, when you've bought into some of the things that you felt would take care of you, give you energy, give you peace, all at once we experience the truth of that lie, and we find ourselves living in a world of fatigue, insecurity, disease, and then it leads to death. So this is the world that we have. The world of looking at a place like Death Valley. And it's an analogy that happens once every 100 to 500 years, where they get an enormous amount of rain overnight, so to speak. And it takes that valley in the following year and it turns it into the most incredible garden ever. And this was first shown to us in the year 2004 when they got an enormous amount of rain. And in 2005, you're looking at that same valley with the seeds that it grew. So from my perspective, this is me to you passing through this valley, this Baca Valley, that I am to really offer a change and give you the opportunity to take the life that you have that's perhaps loaded with fatigue and lack of energy and stress and even those horrible addictions that you have, from alcohol to pornography to gambling and the diseases that are associated, to give that up and move out of that world and into this one. And the story was first told in Nehemiah when they hid the Torah, or this book that told man how to live, finances, government, everything, including diet. And so they finally found it, and the people were so responsive, they could not believe it. And so they hid this from them, and Nehemiah in his own writing said, so here we are today, because we had these things hidden from us, that we are slaves. And I think that's pretty much where many of us are in America today. So the question is, how then should man live? Solomon writing, Aristotle following up, Francis Schaeffer in the 20th century. And basically Solomon said, for gaining a disciplined, an intelligently disciplined life, first to be right, then to be just, and then to be fair. Now, the Greeks, in their mindset, they simply said to get above the fracas. Let the rest of the people scramble and figure this thing out. But the Hebrew said, no, let's get in the middle of it. Let's solve this thing because we have experience, we have knowledge, and that's what I'm going to suggest to you. And that's all we did, was to produce 2 products, of which I'll get into, that are designed to create energy, put off the aging process, clean the body, do all of the things that you need to do with foods, and then one called Mitzrayim, which allows you to sleep at night. It's an incredible product. So join me in this fracas. Steve Wilson, NefeshEnergy.com.